to the Hurtbox podcast again, and we're really excited to be back again. And look, we get really excited about these every week. I really look forward to it, and tonight is no different, if not even more exciting. A bit of a fanboy of this guy. He's what I'd call an enigma, someone that's not human, and we'll get into that. And quickly introduce none other than Jason English. So, Jace,
welcome Jason.
Mate.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you so much for coming on board.
Yeah, look, thank you for joining us, mate. We're honoured to have you and all our guests. You know, it's an absolute honour for us to have these people on and share these stories. And your story is super interesting. And if anyone doesn't know, Jason, you know, you've been living under a rock. So we'll get into your career. But Simon, any little notes from you to start with, mate?
Oh, look, just want to do a big shout out to Lycra Brothers in Melbourne, who have come on board as our first official sponsor. Also want to do a huge shout out to the almost 2,000 viewers we've had to date. Huge following, and also for our Facebook supporters too. Just been amazing, and thanks for all the love and support. And now over to you, Jason. Really keen to get this going, and love to hear how you first got on the bike.
First in the mountain biking, I probably first started almost on the BMX. I grew up in a farm just out of Gloucester. And my parents, I looked at my friends with envy as they had motorbikes and they were getting the fang around and chase cows. We had the option of horse or bike. And my horses my parents had were just stupid. Like, they kind of wanted to do their own thing. Where I felt if I wanted to be in control, I had to be on the bike. So that's how I grew up, learning how to dodge cow manure, ride the single track, and stay upright on the bike. So I guess it all started when my dad first got hooked on mountain biking, when the Mountain Man started up at Gloucester. So that's an annual event that's grown. It's seen lots of numbers over the time. Lots of really high-profile riders and athletes have been through that event. And once my dad saw mountain biking and how cool it was, the whole family got decked out. And from then, every family holiday was a mountain bike holiday.
Perfect,
so whether it was Canberra or Canberra was pretty much an annual event.
Hey, what was your first bike your dad got you?
Yeah.
Okay, it was a Villager. The brand was a Villager. It was a fully rigid 26. I'd be impressed if someone could find a picture of it. I was so excited. Chromoly, full Shimano DX 3x7. I eventually got the upgrade to an LX crankset when I, destroyed the old square taper. Eventually went up to some Manitou 3 suspension forks when we actually re-welded the chromoly forks a few times when they were getting bent. You'd sort of bend them back, weld them after you cracked them. Manitou 3s lasted a couple of years. They eventually cracked, but yeah, that bike saw quite a bit of damage, quite a bit of use. And I rode it stacks, rode it into the ground, I guess is the best way to describe it.
Cantilever brakes?
Oh, yeah, that's the only way to do it. I think I actually got the brake boosters eventually, which, game changer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. Look, I think that's one of the best things about these chats is just reliving that stuff and forgetting about that stuff. Last week we were talking to Myra and she mentioned that one of her bikes, she had a Proflex with a Gerwin front end. Wow. Haven't thought about that for years. So, mate, when did it really grab you in terms of, you obviously had a passion for it, but in terms of racing, what was your first race?
Well, at school, I guess I was probably an okay cross-country runner. I was usually the first few in my year. In 20, I'd say, 20, wasn't then, just before the 2000 Olympics, in 1996, they ran a bit of talent identification through schools where teachers were encouraged to send through results to regional areas where there could be selection for the Olympics. I wasn't selected from the Olympics from my beep test score, but it was good enough to be identified as an athlete with potential gifting in mountain biking, and they set me up with the Hunter Club. So sort of half a year later, I got into racing around Killingworth, and that became our once a month trip as a family was down to Newcastle to race around at the age of 16. So then I think in under 17s and under 19s, I continued just doing cross-country races at Killingworth and then backing that up with the national champs each year for a few years going through high school.
Now, can I ask, a recollection of mine was you at Killingworth on probably a giant XTC hardtail.
Well, I highly doubt it because I don't know if I've ridden a Giant in my life.
Oh, there you
So
go. Right.
my bikes like went from this Villager. My upgrade went to my dad's bike. So dad found it hard to really bias any of the kids with buying a $3,000 bike for them. So he bought a bike for himself that I don't think he ever rode at all. I just sort of commandeered that. So that was a Balance. So
Oh,
we got an aluminium Balance. That was a Mac 5. So Manitou Mac 5s when they were around, full XT. So I rode
Mate, I'm
that.
having this conversation with my son today on mountain bikes, and he's got my old Specialized Julie Epic, and he's like, it's not good enough. I'm like, mate, I'm going to get him to watch this and just go, look, you get your dad's hand-me-downs, and that's it.
Oh,
yeah.
mine wasn't my dad's hand-me-down, so maybe don't let him know. My dad brought a brand new bike. He kept his old one so that I could ride that because he didn't want
Wow.
to show favoritism towards any of the sons, which worked out in my favor, probably not his own. But yeah, I went on to that. I kept that bike all the way through until I went off to uni, and then I had to go and buy a Trek. I think Extreme Cycles were operating in Newcastle,
Oh,
and
wow.
so
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was my bike for a couple of years before I cracked the frame and upgraded to a carbon. I think I flogged an old. I managed to purchase a Merida on the cheap that had a full XTR group set, and then just put this Trek together. So that Trek 9.8, I think it was a bike that I had for many years. That would have been from like 1999 all the way through to '06. So that was a
So
bike that
how
I
many
was doing.
Ks do you reckon you put through that?
I've still got that bike. Oh,
Oh,
it's
wow.
it was 1.4 kilos in its day. Like for the frame, it was on the first carbon bikes
Wow.
available. But yeah, that bike went through so many drivetrains. It was unbelievable. But yeah, I was doing 8 hours, 6 hours. My first 24 hour was on that bike with a torch strapped to the frame. That's
No
kind of
way.
how I got into it.
Was it a rechargeable torch or was it batteries?
Dolphin.
Oh, there's a bit of it. I think I brought it was like a 3 watt light, and I was like, this LED technology, 3 watts. It was quite impressive, but nothing compared to like the HIDs and things that people were running at
Wow.
the time. So someone would come past with those HIDs, and you just couldn't. You basically had to stop your bike and wait for them to go past before you could ride again. But that was
Wow.
my kind of introduction to what it was like riding at night.
So, Joyce, can you tell us about? Because I remember those early cross country days, and this may bring back some memories of you and Fremo with
Oh
Fremo
yeah.
seat post that was about hello to Fremo if you're out there, mate. His seat post was as long as a telegraph pole, and you guys were really battling all the time. They were my memories. They were great memories. Then it appeared to be a real transition, and I'm sort of thinking that transition took several years to move across to the more so the 100Ks and then later the 24s. Can you explain that transition from the cross country stuff through to the longer stuff?
Well, I guess I was racing in anything and everything that was going on. I think that's the beauty of not having kids, and my wife liked riding as well at the time. So we'd just travel. So a typical weekend, if there's a cross country race on down in Canberra or an 8 hour, we'd just drive down there, do the race on a Sunday. It might finish at 5 o'clock after Prezzo, and then would be at work again in Port Macquarie on the Monday. And that was just standard. So crazy traveling weekends, going to anything and everything. And that's why we're going to every single Hon Fling, every Convict 100. Each time there was a Coffs 100, Flight Centre Epic. We're going to all the original races, and that was standard. That was mountain biking. Everybody did that. We travelled all around the countryside, going to anything and everything. So if cross country was popular, and there were lots of cross country events, there was a state series. I'd go and do the state series, and
Were
as
you racking
many
up
of
some
those
good
events as I
results
could.
in those?
I guess my fondest memory was finally cracking a state title in cross country. Do you want to guess where
Wow.
that was?
No.
Killingworth.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
wow.
So
Awesome.
that was very special to me. So after racing the whole state series in, a couple of years leading up, I think the state series kind of died off a couple of years afterwards. But while it was still going, I was stoked to actually, pick up a
Oh,
cross
no.
country title in there. So that would have been like '07 or something. So yeah, quite a while ago when Killingworth was at its best.
And what was the first 100K victory?
Oh, I would almost say the first time I raced in elite, I didn't win the race, but for me, that was the real game changer at the Convict 100. So the Convict 100, if you looked at how deep the elite feed would be, you look at the top 20 and you just go, whoa, there are some guys that are racing World Cup rounds. There's guys that are, podium in the national cross-country series. And I recall the first year where I was sponsored by Dirtworks and BMC, then I was like, gee, I better actually tick the elite box for a change. The year before I was in age group. This year I was like, so this would have been 07 when they sort of grabbed me. I was like, I'm going to race in elite. I remember going past Perendelicore and going, this guy's a legend. I'm going past him.
Wow.
This is awesome. And then catch up to Sean Lewis. And I'm like, I'm going past Sean Lewis. What the heck? And then riding along, I think the Convict 100 course was going clockwise. And going down I think it's Shepherd's Gully down to the tar section before the canoe bridge, I caught Gordo. And so catching up to Gordo, I was like, up to Craig Gordon. So at the time, he's racing, World Cup rounds. He's winning all the 100 Kers without a problem. And he's like, are you doing the 50 or the 100? Like, he had no idea who I was. And I'm like, Gordo, you're like my superstar, like my hero. So then he's expecting me to do turns for him. And I'm like, I've got no idea how to do turns. I don't even have a road bike, I don't think. So him and I sopped off on the tar, and then he just rode away. And I think I came in third just going, that was the game changer. That was I feel I can actually do this and be competitive against these guys when I saw I could finish with them.
Hey, so while we're talking about hundreds, can we talk about the Otway? How many Otways have you done?
Oh, that is the race where I just haven't been able to have any success in it. And I don't know if it's through mechanicals and braking chains or just the quality of riders down in Melbourne. It's just unbelievable. So you got like John Goodwood would always win it, or you just have these gun riders that had come out and just dominate it.
But the course itself is like
Forest
mental.
Forest is such a nice place to be, and that's where, if they did something similar in all mountain bike parks, I think you just see so many more people mountain biking. You go down the forest and there's 10 people that live there. But if you find one of the little brochures that goes, this is trail 1, trail 2, trail 3, shows you how to link them all together. They're all graded. They're all well maintained. It is just such a great destination. So I've raced 24 hours down there. I've raced 300-kilometre races down there. And the Otways a couple of times. So it's a great place to be riding.
Sure is.
Mate, I was going to jump in there with a question around mental toughness, but I think we might leave that until we move into the longer stuff, the 24-hour stuff. So for those mere mortals out there, though, who've ridden that Convict 100 or the Otway, how challenging, like from a bunter's perspective, that last hour or two is just torture. Is it the same for you guys?
Okay, so it depends what you're aiming for. So when I used to race in age group, so I'd put that back to 05, sort of 06, I'd pack a Sanger. That'd be my approach, right? I didn't know about gels and nutrition. I didn't use CO2s. I just had a bike pump and a Camelback. And I still remember in 08, I think it was, having a bit of a sprinter with Neil Vanderplug. I'm not sure if you've heard of this guy. I had a sprint finish with him. I'm on my 26-inch hardtail with a Camelback on while everyone else is getting bottles past, and that was kind of how I just, I guess I was never professional in the eyes of other riders because I just didn't know. Like, I was still learning. This is all still new to me, even though I was experiencing some fairly good success.
That's incredible.
And there was an event at Dungog one year, maybe a 6 or 8 hour, and I remember seeing your wife feeding you Vegemite sandwiches. Is that right?
Oh, I went through a year where that's all I ate in I think maybe the first 24-hour championship that I won. That was all I ate, just Vegemite sandwiches. And what was funny, there was two things that came out of it. Is the next 24-hour I did, my wife tried to pass me a Vegemite sandwich. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it for about 3 years, probably more. But the other thing that came about it is all the other guys that I'm racing against were going Vegemite sandwiches.
So really?
So unfair. I can't do them now.
I know a few people who may have tried that as well. It wasn't me, of course. Yeah.
Oh, it's a good win.
And moving from the 100K type stuff, you're probably doing a few 8 hours, etc. What was the drive to move and the motivation to move to the 24 hours?
Well, I actually think it was in a team race. I don't think I was living in Newcastle at the time, but I think Adam Freeman needed someone for his team. I think there was Stu Bistro and maybe Crew were in there as well. So I think the four of us were riding around. It was ridiculously cold and ridiculously muddy. So I think we're doing. This was down at must have been the Mont. So it must have been the old Sparrow tracks. So riding around there, you'd do 2 laps. You'd come in and go, okay, I've now got 2 hours to rest before I go out again. Do I have a shower? And you're like, no, I'm not going to have a shower. It's going to take me like 10 minutes. And then I'm just going to try and go to sleep. But then you're too cold, you're too wet. And I was like, this sucks. This actually sucks. I'm so miserable, so cold. I might as well just have a crack and ride the thing myself. But the other thing I thought is most of these events, you have a look at what's the main event. And the main event is the solo thing. That's what people celebrate. That solo guy who's just insane. At the time, I thought, there's no way. Like, I don't know how people could possibly do a 24-hour. It just seems outrageous. But now I've seen other events, and I'm like, 24-hour racing is probably not as crazy as what some people think now.
I'm really surprised to hear that response, because now, obviously, you've been such a prolific 24-hour world champion, and let's get into that in a minute. But how nervous were you when you ticked that box the first time? 24-hour solo.
Oh, okay. The first 24 solo, that was back on that Trek hardtail. I'd be lying if I said I probably didn't cry much. So my wife's she's a bit of a driver in the pits, and I don't know where that's led to a little bit of success. But I still remember this was down in Sydney at Del Rio. There's I'll have to try and find the place. There was another place in Sydney where it's just ridiculously cold, and lap after lap, my wife would be just tucked up under the doona on a little chair, nice and warm, having a sleep. And I'd come in each lap and just go, all right, where's my food? Where's my bottle? And I'd go, can I just sit down just for 2 minutes? And she'd be, the same message she'd give me is, we didn't come all the way down here to Sydney for you to sleep. You want to do a 24-hour race? Get out there and ride. And I'd be like, I'm freezing. So I think eventually she was letting me sleep for like a minute per lap for a few laps, but it was miserable.
Wow.
It was just, but I think because I might have had 10 minutes sleep total. I was eating a uni student diet, so whatever was on special, I think donuts and croissants were, so I sort of went with that. But finished the race and I was like, I came second or third. Maybe I should get serious about this and work out how the heck people can do this competitively. So Andrew Bell from down in Victoria, is sponsored by Cone at the time. I don't know how many times he lapped me, but him and Saul Britton were top two. They were just fighting each other the whole time. I think Saul eventually pulled out, so I moved into that second position a few laps down. But it was just interesting to go, these guys, they've got it sorted. They've got a system. I don't know how they do this. So then my mission was just to try and race Andy Bell. And that's the only reason why I went on to the national championships in 2008. Not to win the national championships. I didn't back myself. I didn't have a clue how to do a 24-hour race. I just wanted to beat Andy Bell. I reckon I had him covered. And then Andy Bell didn't turn up to the 2008 championships, so I didn't know what to do. So
what did you do?
He won.
Sort of rode around and ended up winning the thing. But that was probably the hardest cross-country finish to a 24-hour I've ever done. It was at a time where I was racing with a mobile phone in my back pocket. Our car broke down on the way out, so I had to, call the mechanic as I was racing and give him credit card details. But the phone was also useful for the last few laps where my wife could sort of, prank call me every time that I think it was John Claxton would come across the finish line. So I knew, okay, I've got about 30 seconds. Okay, you might be catching. I need to go a bit faster. So it was that close, and I needed that reassurance that what I was doing was working. But I remember finishing that race. They had the podium, And I was standing next to a fence going, I hope I throw up now rather than throwing up on the podium, because I was just drinking gels like crazy for the last few hours because I just needed anything I could get. But yeah, I was pretty messy.
You've said between 1 and 4 is the hardest time for you in a 24-hour. How did you keep awake? How did you keep that focus going? How did you keep, alert or on your bike during those 1 a.m. to 4 a.m. stints?
Yeah, so I found once I started racing competitively in the first few years, there was a whole adrenaline. It was the whole, I'm racing. This is it. This is lights. This is all new experience. And then I found caffeine, I think probably 4 years after racing 24s. And then that's a game changer. No caffeine before then. I didn't drink Coke, didn't have caffeinated gels, nothing like that. So I have no idea how I raced in 08 and 09. I don't think I found caffeine until maybe 2011, so quite a few world titles later. But I've also been popping no-dos during events and have just been able to fall asleep within like 2 minutes, like no problem. Especially those bike packing events where you're on like day 3 going, I haven't slept for a little while, and popping no-dos, and then you can just sleep on the hardest possible surface, no problems. Like it's just your body sometimes just goes nuts.
Jace, the time police are going to get away from us here, but before we go into your world titles, can you take us? We like to ask, and I'm sure you're an avid viewer of this podcast. I hope you are. We really like to delve into those almost the dark places that we end up going, and for some mere mortals, that dark place might be 5 minutes going up a climb where you start to think, oh my God, I think I'm going to die. Can you take us to that place where, as Simon said, it's 3:30 in the morning? Surely you have some dark moments. Can you take us there, and how do you get through it?
Yeah, so I find with 24 hours the hardest thing, that 1 to 4 o'clock, I do a lot of little goal setting. So I will go, okay, what time is it? Oh, it's almost nighttime. Awesome. We get to put the lights on. It's going to be a completely new course. And then you're good for the first few hours during the night. And then when you get around that midnight, 1 o'clock, you're like, oh, that sucks. I've had my 12 o'clock caffeine, 1 o'clock, and then you're sort of just hanging out. Where's my next? I can't have my next caffeine hit the 3 o'clock. How do I get through that? So that's a bit that I struggle with. And I found the best way to stay awake through a 24 is to have your brain working, and to have your caffeine working, and to have your heart rate working. You have those 3 things working against you, and you just are in a really bad place. So I find if I'm soft pedaling, if I let my heart rate come down to like 100 beats a minute or less, if I just have nothing to think about, and I'll just be struggling. So the big thing is when I'm falling asleep now, I know that I've just got to pedal harder, bring the heart rate up, keep the caffeine going, and be thinking about stuff. Chuck a podcast on. One of the hardest Everests I've done, so I've done quite a few silly Everests, like ones where you're going, I'm just going to try this Everest eating just cashews only and see what happens, or just eating boiled eggs only, tried on a fixed wheel. When did a Melbourne one on the blue bikes one stage, that was like 36 hours. It was 36 hours, and I thought it'd be 12. 36. One of the harder ones I did turned out to be 500K, just over 500Ks long, so longer than I thought once again. But the gradient was so gradual, you could be climbing at 100 beats a minute. And I was struggling so bad in that. Through the podcast on, start thinking about some crazy Dr. Carl sort of weird analogies, and then I'm like, I'm awake because I'm thinking, my brain's working, and you can start going again. But the worst place I think I've been in is in one of the cloud ride events. So they're the 1,000K bike packing events where it's not prescribed how much rest you should have. So if you don't sleep, you don't. You just keep going. So I think the first night, you might sleep for an hour or two, but I remember just getting deja vu. So you get deja vu where you just go, I know it's around the next corner. I've been here before. You get around the corner and you can be, I've definitely been here before. Keep going up the next hill. Yep, this is all familiar. Get around the next corner. I know what's going to be around the corner. Get around the corner and go, yep, that's exactly what I thought was going to be here. And then you have a look at Strava and the maps and you're like, what the heck? Never have I been here in my life, but I was 120% sure. Deja vu that I convinced. but it's not that uncommon. Apparently, that's a fairly common get crazy tired. That's what happens to you.
That's incredible.
Not many people can climb at 100 beats a minute. I'll just let you know. But anyway, mate, look, it's almost embarrassing to try and condense. Is it 7 or 8 world 24-hour titles?
Yeah, got 7 worlds in there.
It's almost embarrassing for us to try and say, how was that? But can you run us through that really quickly? The first time, where was it? How did it feel?
Yeah, first time was in Canada. And I guess the big thing is, if you look at the Australian results, Australia was dominating. So we had Craig Gordon win in 07, Willow won in 08. So just before 08, I broke my back about 12 weeks out. So I guess I went into that event going, I'm not here to be competitive. I'm here just to wear a green and gold jersey around, sort of because I could. And I came second in that event, thinking that, well, okay, I can come second in this. I'm going to have a decent crack in 09. And that's what I did. So for me, I guess the big thing was going, I've won this for Australia now. So Australia's now got it 07, 08, and 09. It just felt so special to throw in a green and gold jersey. I know there's lots of people that are into the marathon racing and go, look, your marathon titles are far more prestigious than your 24-hour titles. But the fact that those 24 hours, how hard you have to train for it, how hard you have to work for it, the people in it, they realise that's it. You got the best in the world competing at this event, and we're happy to call that world titles.
Oh, yeah, wow. I don't even know what to say. I'm a bit speechless.
Yeah. But what I find interesting though is some of your success didn't translate to backers or supporters or anything really significant, which I think is incredibly unfortunate. I think a lot of your career, from what I've read, is that you've had to be resilient financially, get yourself to races, back yourself. That must have been incredibly challenging. Yeah,
my wife's so disappointed I didn't take up golf. Or tennis, like either of those sports, she would have been very happy with. But the 24-hour thing, not quite. But yeah, that's right. I would that's the one thing I feel I have missed out on in the mountain biking is being in a solid team. The best thing I had was with BMC and Dirtworks, because the whole crew would go and do the Mountains of Beach stage race. We got to stay together, and you had that whole team thing going on. And that's where I think there's some really good things going on with road racing, where you've got that whole team thing going on. And mountain biking, it doesn't seem to happen as much. And there's been quite a few years where you have had these teams come through. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I think, and that's where what I'm doing in Newcastle now, we're trying to get this little junior team going so that, together as a crew, we can go and travel from event to event. We've hooked up with our school to get a trailer so that we can now transport the kids to events so that parents don't have to hook in. And that's something special to me, is to go, how do you provide this team support to other people? So we've sort of gone through that way, and I can kind of live it out a little bit in the, through the kids having fun. So, I'm enjoying it.
But it sounds like even though with that experience, you're still encouraging kids to get into the sport, which is just phenomenal, mate.
That's right.
Can I just say there, it's amazing what Jason does for the kids, It's an absolute inspiration having, pardon me, sorry, worked with Jason on a couple of those events and organising them, and the amount of input that you have, but just how humble you are with those kids. I know, for example, my 13-year-old is just, oh my God, that's Jason English, and mate, it's a real credit to you how much you put into it. So well done.
Well done, mate. And just going back to your sort of development on the bike, you were mentioning earlier before we started the session about your stomach and how you've had to change your diet. I'm really keen to jump into that. I know it's a topic that's close to Paul's stomach, to want of a better phrase. But can you tell us how you gradually learn about what fuels your body and really how you get the best out of it in terms of performance?
Oh, are you talking celiac disease? Is that what you want to throw some questions around?
You mentioned Vegemite sandwiches. You mentioned gels. What did you learn over the course of your career?
Yeah, don't eat Vegemite. It gives you celiac disease. Not the case at all. Yeah, so I married a dietitian. That was kind of my pickup line. Didn't really work for me. I met Jen. I was like, so Jen, I need my diet sorted. Do you know anyone that can help me out? thinking that she'd volunteer her own time, and then she palmed me off to someone else. I was devastated. But anyway, so she's been experimenting on me, year after year. We've tried things with, stocks and salts and instant mashed potatoes. And so she's done a lot of work. She's, done some dietetics courses with the AIS to try and find out what the latest and greatest are. I've had some really good nutrition sponsors through the time, only through Shots and Goo. So both those products have been great. And you sort of need that as an elite athlete. If you look at how many gels I have in a 24-hour race, it's up to 20 or more. So if I had to fund that myself, you're going, oh, that's $60 worth of the gels. And then you need to use it in training as well, plus the electrolyte. So it becomes quite expensive. So I've been very fortunate to have nutrition sponsors along the way. So yeah, I've playing around different strategies, but in the 24, it's normally, gels during the day while the intensity is on. When the intensity drops off, then you're looking at alternate options where you're getting some more solid food in, because I can't do gels alone. There have been guys in 24-hour races that have raced successfully on gels only, and the reason they do that is to combat stomach issues. I've actually had some people who own different nutrition companies say the only reason why I win 24 hours is because of my iron guts, because that's been, part of success is to be able to just keep riding through and not get sick. And the first world championship that I didn't win was probably the first world championship that I had celiac disease. It was only 2 or 3 months later I was diagnosed. So during that race, I kept going, I'm feeling crook. Just give me plain water and plain bread. So that's all I was eating to try and, keep things simple, trying to avoid the gels, thinking that's what's making me crook, but, ended up being something different. So, yeah, my nutrition strategies have definitely changed over the years. Electrolyte is, a big part of that. I've heard some people say that, why drink fluid with just plain water? It's just like a wasted opportunity to not be getting carbs and, getting some electrolyte in there. And the amount I drink and eat has varied a lot as well. When you do these bike packing events, that's when you have to take your nutrition really serious, because you might be planning for 500 kilometers without resupply. So you have to go 500 Ks. What do I need to take? I'm also celiac, so I can't just jump into the bakery and smash pies as much as I would love to. So, yeah, I've got to plan carefully what that looks like through stroop waffles or 15-serve gel flasks and lots of things like that. So definitely been a learning experience. But for the people that have celiac out there, Snickers bars are the win on bikepacking trips.
Twirls. I want to get by twirls because I eat twirls every day. You got to have a twirl every day.
And on everything, which was your best result? Was it on the cashew nuts, on the boiled eggs? What was the best result?
Oh, I actually didn't mind the boiled eggs. I was surprised about that, but I also carb loaded really hard going into that. The cashew was okay because it does have an element of carb within it, and it's got, fairly healthy fats. I did cheat though. So on the last 2 hours, I had to go for some pretty strong coffee.
Right.
But I should have weighed in before and after. I think a couple of days later, I probably would have been pretty lean just going the fat only, but I don't train fat only. So my body was trying to adapt during that 24. But yeah, I've definitely done some big ones, big Everests.
Again, hate to try and we're running short on time, but the Everesting attempts, the one I would ask is about 10 Ks from where I'm standing right now, and that's Cranky Corner Road.
Oh,
yeah. Can you please describe the stats on that hill for everyone? It's phenomenal.
I could describe the stats on how many bikes I went through. That's probably a better way to describe it.
Spoiling the brakes.
I went into this cranky corner going, I'll just take my cyclocross. Like, it's got good brakes, it's got nice low gears, she'll be right. It had some nice lightweight rotors on it. Going down the hill for the first time, I was just like holding my brake levers comfortably, and then I was pulling them closer and closer, and then I had them on the bars and I was accelerating.
Nothing happening.
So as I'm accelerating down the hill, approaching this corner, I then put my stomach on the seat. So I've still got my brakes as hard squeezed, and I'm dragging both feet on the ground going down this tar hill. Like, that's how steep it was. And so then I'm like, you've got to be kidding. How am I going to do the rest of this Everest? So then I'm like, okay, that was all right. I'll just take it easy the next time. Next time I go down, and then I think I find out I've just run out of back brake completely. Like I've roasted the rotor and the brake pad's just almost disintegrated. So I'm like, well, I can't waste time. I've got someone else bringing a bike out. I've only got, 12 hours or, 14 hours of lights and everything. So then I'm going down that hill with front brake only. So I'm just, having to nurse it. I borrowed a locals mountain bike for, a few laps while I waited for my proper mountain bike to come out. It's just, you got to choose your hills carefully.
So, mate, how many times did you go up and down that?
I just look at the watch, so I couldn't tell you that. It's all about that.
64 times or something stupid like that, wasn't it? Or more? Was it even more?
I only got in. I often just put my hand up to go, that sounds like a stupid idea. I haven't planned for it. When we're doing it tomorrow, I'm in. So I've done that. I did a running Everest like that earlier on this year. Yeah, that didn't go. So I finished the thing because I've got mongrel, but not fitness or technique. So, yes.
We are coming close to time, but just before we go over to what you're currently doing in terms of your Strava account, are there any tips or tricks to first timers in a 24-hour race? Is there any do's or don'ts for those first time 24-hour riders out there?
Well, the sensible ones, they always say it's all about your average lap time. It's not about your fastest lap time. So you can't win a 24-hour in the first lap, but you can definitely lose a 24-hour in the first lap. So you just want to start out sensible, pick a pace you can do, go for it, plan your night strategy. Do you have enough lights? How are you going to stay awake? Are you going to keep your brain going? How are you going to keep your caffeine going? How are you going to keep your heart rate going? So you need to think about those things. But the piece of advice that I will give you, especially if you're riding around Canberra, is if you see a singular arm warmer on the ground, don't take it. Like you might think, oh, what a win. This is awesome. Like I'm cold. I'll chuck it on. There's a reason why some people drop arm warmers on the ground and they're possibly pre-used. So don't do it.
Oh, what a great story. I must say, Jason, there's been many an occasion, and you wouldn't remember any of these, 6 hours, 8 hours. I'd never do anything longer than that because it's just ridiculous. And I'd be doing them in a team, and I'd be thinking, we're going good today. We'd be smashing out these laps, and all of a sudden you'd hear this person behind you and it'd be bloody Jason. And you'd think, hang on a minute, he's doing this on his own. And he'd sit there quite comfortably, hey, how you going, mate? Oh, how's your day? Blah, blah, blah. And just casually ride away. And, it just blows my mind, mate. Your career and your ability, it's just amazing. So well done. And I hope this has been a good opportunity to sort of relive some of those memories. I could talk to you for 4 hours and unpack every single world title and, mate, what an illustrious career. So I really want to say thank you for sharing your time and look, thank you for what you do for the sport for kids. I know my kids have benefited from your hard work, and I know you're still working on trying to set up another kids offshoot club as well, which is it's just a huge credit to your passion for the sport. So
yeah, before we do go, Jason, can you tell us about your current charity ride that started off as a small endeavour but somehow blew out? Can you give us some dirt on that?
Yeah, so we've got the Starlight Foundation going on in September. I signed up on that because one of our kids that's involved with coaching, and also my wife's cousin, their little bub, got diagnosed with leukemia fairly recently. So cancer is something that's like affecting people around me. So the opportunity to look after the kids and provide them with some care while they're in hospital and to fundraise for that. We sort of jumped at that with some of our coaching team as well. I laid down the challenge. So I was going to do 100 Ks a day. I thought that's a big push for me. We're looking at doing 700 Ks a week. But then as the money sort of crept up coming in, as people were, putting sponsorship dollars towards me, I just laid it out there, said, hey, if I get $1,000 down there, I'm going to do 1,000 Ks a week. And so I've left it a bit late. So I'm playing catch up now because someone actually did that. It's actually the guy from Jet Black. He's like, I see how close you are. I want to see you do that 1,000 Ks a week. Dumped a couple $100 to get us up there, and now I'm doing 200 Ks a day, mostly on the indoor trainer, which is a little bit. I probably shouldn't say that, but yes, that's
horrible.
That's how that works. Very good cause. So
What are
yes.
you using for chamois cream on the indoor trainer, mate?
Oh, sweat, I think, indoors. All you need for chamois cream. I've done a few 24 hours. You don't need chamois cream anymore once you've done a few of those.
But, mate, we are going to put the link for your fundraiser in the description for our YouTube, and we'll put it up on Facebook as well, just to send some of those donations your way. And just backing and, reiterating what Paul said. Look, we cannot thank you enough for your time tonight. It's been a real pleasure to sit down and talk with you, and making us, look good in terms of our channel and the quality of the guests that we get along. Like Paul said, just really great to hear about your career, and hopefully the people that are watching it can pick up a few tips and tricks. But look, from us to you, thank you so much, and to our viewers, we look forward to seeing you again next week. We've got WAZZA McDonald, who's fresh back from Tokyo, the Paralympic cycling coach. We'll sit down with Paul and I next week, so we'll hear from him. But until then, just like to say, stay safe. Thanks to you, Jason, and thanks to you, Paul. Anything, Jason, before we go, you wanted to close out with, mate?
I was going to say, thanks, guys. You're doing a great job. It's really, really good to see, and I look forward to seeing the rest of your podcasts.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
No problem. Have a good night, guys.
We'll